Most people think the next 10 years will look just like the last 10. Same job, same income, same habits, same results. But that's never how life actually works. Because 10 years is enough time to reinvent your money, your identity, your opportunities, and your entire future, if you know the right sequence. The problem? Almost no one follows it. Not because it's complicated, but because it's invisible. Today, I'm going to show you the 10-year plan that actually works. The plan that turns ordinary people into financially free people. And the strange reason why most people waste a decade without realizing it, until it's too late. If you ask someone what they can change in a single year, they'll tell you almost nothing. But if you ask what 10 years can do, they freeze. Because deep down, we all know the truth. 10 years is enough time to become unrecognizable. The problem is that most people don't feel the weight of a decade while they're living it. Time doesn't shout. It whispers. And when it whispers, most people ignore it. 10 years pass quietly. You work. You pay bills. You fight through stress. You promise yourself you'll start investing next month. You tell yourself things will get easier after this season. You keep meaning to fix your leaks, your habits, your income, your spending. But life keeps interrupting. And suddenly, one day, you look back and realize something terrifying. Nothing changed because nothing was built. Not because you were lazy, not because you lacked discipline, but because you never had a direction. You lived the decade reacting instead of constructing, surviving instead of building. A decade without intention becomes a decade lost. But here's the part no one tells you. A decade with intention becomes the most powerful tool you will ever have. Because money compounds, habits compound, skills compound, and small changes today become unstoppable momentum later. You don't need a miracle. You need a plan that respects time instead of ignoring it. And the moment you switch from hoping to designing, everything starts to shift. Most people don't fail because they lack ambition. They fail because they build their 10-year plan on top of an unstable life. They try to invest while drowning in small emergencies. They try to grow income while living in constant fear of the next unexpected bill. They try to be consistent in a system full of cracks. It's like planting seeds during a storm. Nothing takes root. This is why so many people start strong and collapse halfway. The problem isn't discipline, it's volatility. You can't stack a decade of progress on top of chaos. And yet, that's how most people try to live. They chase complicated strategies. They watch charts, trends, gurus, predictions. They jump into investments they don't understand. They copy random advice from people who don't know their life. And all of this happens while the foundation is still shaking. Here's the hard truth. Your 10-year plan doesn't begin with investing. It begins with stability, with fixing the leaks that drain your progress, with removing the chaos that breaks your habits, with building a baseline that can survive bad days, bad months, and bad seasons. Because a decade is long, and if your system collapses every time life gets difficult, you will restart the journey over and over again. Stability isn't exciting, it isn't glamorous, but it is the floor everything else stands on. The moment you stop fighting fires, you can finally start building the future. Once stability is in place, something surprising happens. The path ahead becomes clear in a way it never was before. Most people think the secret to a 10-year plan is big moves, a perfect investment, a huge jump in income, some breakthrough moment that magically accelerates everything. But the real secret is much simpler. Your first step determines all the others. Because the human mind doesn't follow progress, it follows direction. If your first step is random, the journey becomes random. If your first step is emotional, the journey becomes chaotic. But if your first step is intentional, the entire decade aligns behind it. Here's what that means. Your first step doesn't have to be big. It just has to be correct. It might be fixing one habit that keeps breaking everything. It might be building a small emergency fund so you stop living in fear. It might be increasing your income by just a little so you can breathe again. It might be getting rid of one recurring bill that drains you every month. These aren't glamorous steps. They don't look like wealth building, but they move you from survival to strategy. Think of your decade like a staircase. The first step sets the angle. If it's crooked, even the 10th step leads nowhere. But if it's aligned, every step after compounds in the same direction. This is why the first part of your 10-year transformation isn't about speed. It's about setting the rails so the rest of the journey becomes automatic. Once you're pointed in the right direction, you don't need motivation. You don't need perfect discipline. You don't need the stars to align. You just take the next step and the next one, and momentum does the rest. Most people abandon their 10-year plan because progress feels too slow. They expect fireworks, they expect dramatic changes, they expect visible results in weeks, not years. And when those results don't show up fast enough, they make the same mistake every time. They jump to a new plan, a new strategy, a new shortcut, which resets the entire decade. But here's the truth, almost nobody understands until it's too late. Slow progress is the most powerful type of progress because it's the only kind you can sustain. Fast progress depends on motivation. Slow progress depends on design. And design always wins. Think about it like pushing a snowball up a hill. In the beginning, it barely moves. Every push feels pointless. Every effort feels invisible. But if you stop pushing because you're bored, frustrated, or impatient, you lose the compounding that was quietly building underneath. Your 10-year plan works the same way. Small contributions that feel insignificant today become meaningful later. Tiny improvements in spending create massive stability later. Minor increases in income unlock opportunities later. What feels like nothing is happening is actually the most important phase of the entire decade. It's the part where the foundation becomes strong enough to handle real momentum. People who understand this stay consistent. People who don't keep restarting. And the ones who stay consistent experience the moment that changes everything. The shift where progress stops depending on effort and starts depending on compounding. That's when the staircase you've been climbing slowly for years becomes a ramp. And suddenly, every step takes you farther than the last. This isn't magic. It's math. But it feels like magic when it finally kicks in. Every 10-year transformation has a moment that feels different from everything before it. Not because something dramatic happened, but because you finally shift from drifting to building. Up until this point, most people live their financial life in reaction mode. Bills come and they pay. Emergencies hit and they scramble. Income arrives and it disappears to whatever feels urgent. The days blur. The months blend. The years slip by quietly. But then, something changes. You stop treating money like a fire to put out and start treating it like a system to construct. It's the year you stop guessing what will happen and start designing what will happen. And this is where the decade becomes powerful. For the first time, your money begins to follow a structure instead of chaos. Your spending has rules. Your saving has purpose. Your investing has intention. Your income has direction. Most people never experience this shift because they're always planning to start later. They tell themselves, I'll save more when things calm down. I'll invest when I earn a little extra. I'll fix my budget when life stops being hectic. But life never stops being hectic. And that's why most people use the first 5 years of every decade as recovery instead of construction. The moment you flip that, the moment you decide this year is the year the plan begins, the entire decade realigns around your intention. And something incredible happens. Your identity changes. You stop seeing yourself as someone who's trying to get ahead and start seeing yourself as someone who builds ahead. A decade built with identity beats a decade lived by accident. Because when you build on purpose, life doesn't just happen to you anymore. You shape it, you steer it, you decide where the next 10 years go. And that single shift, happening in one ordinary year, is what separates people who end a decade in the same place from people who end it free. There's a moment in every 10-year plan where the strategy shifts from effort to skill. And that skill is not budgeting. It's not investing. It's not cutting expenses. It's alignment. Alignment is the point where your goals, your habits, your income, and your lifestyle stop fighting each other and start working in the same direction. Most people never reach this phase because their financial life is one big contradiction. They say they want stability, but their habits are unstable. They say they want freedom, but their spending traps them. They say they want to invest more, but their lifestyle takes every dollar first. They say they want a better future, but their present is pulling them backward. A decade cannot compound if the pieces of your life are pushing against each other. Alignment fixes that. It's when your spending finally reflects your priorities. It's when your habits stop collapsing under stress. It's when your income starts supporting your goals instead of working against them. It's when your lifestyle stops leaking money faster than you can earn it. This alignment doesn't happen overnight. It grows in tiny, almost invisible adjustments. A better routine here, a cleaner system there, one less financial leak each month, one smarter choice each week. And slowly, without fanfare, without applause, your entire financial life clicks into place. When alignment takes over, wealth becomes easier, not because life gets easier, but because your energy stops being wasted on friction. The cracks that used to drain you are gone. The chaos that used to break your momentum disappears. The battles you used to fight every month no longer exist. For the first time, every part of your life is compounding in the same direction. Your income, your habits, your systems, your identity. This is the point where ordinary people quietly become extraordinary over a decade. Not because they tried harder, but because they finally stopped working against themselves. And once alignment shows up, the next 10 years don't just change your finances, they change your entire trajectory. There's a point in every 10-year plan where stability, systems, and alignment finally set the stage for the next lever: income growth. But here's the twist almost no one tells you. Most people try to grow their income too early, before stability, before alignment, before fixing the leaks that swallow all progress. So when they finally earn more, nothing changes. The extra income disappears into the same cracks that were draining them before. The decade resets again. But once your foundation is strong, income growth becomes a multiplier instead of a bandage. And that's when everything accelerates. Income growth doesn't have to be dramatic. In fact, the most powerful increases come from small strategic moves. A new skill that raises your value, a shift into a better paying role, a promotion you finally qualify for because your life isn't in chaos, a side project that starts tiny but compounds quietly in the background. People underestimate how much a modest increase can transform a decade. An extra $300 a month becomes $3,600 a year, which becomes $36,000 in 10 years before even touching compounding. And that's from just one small upgrade. But the real magic happens when your income grows while your lifestyle stays stable. That gap between what you earn and what you spend becomes the engine of your entire 10-year journey. It's where your investments come from. It's where your freedom comes from. It's where your momentum comes from. The reason most people never experience this is because lifestyle grows with income. They upgrade the car. They upgrade the apartment. They upgrade the weekends. And the decade passes with nothing to show for it. But when you break that pattern, when income rises while lifestyle stays controlled, the compounding becomes unstoppable. This is the part of the journey where people look back and say, "I can't believe how fast things changed." Not because the decade was easy, but because you finally built something the decade could amplify. Every 10-year transformation reaches a turning point. A moment where you feel something shift, quietly, almost silently, yet unmistakably. It's the moment your system begins working harder than you do. Most people never experience this because they quit during the years when progress feels invisible. They think nothing is happening. They think the effort isn't worth it. They think the small contributions don't matter. But the truth is that the small years are the years that build the powerful years. Because in a long-term plan, there is always a delay between effort and reward, a gap between the work you put in and the results you see, a season where everything feels slow, right before everything speeds up. This is the moment where habits stop collapsing, where savings stop disappearing, where your investments stop feeling fragile, where your income finally starts flowing toward your goals instead of away from them. For the first time, you see consistency forming without force. You're not fighting your system anymore. You're supported by it. Your bills are predictable. Your routines are automatic. Your savings grow even when life gets messy. Your investment accounts rise quietly in the background. Your decisions become simpler because the path is already set. And that's when the 10-year plan reveals its real power. You realize progress was never about working harder. It was about removing friction, removing chaos, removing the leaks and misalignment that kept resetting your journey. When the system finally clicks, money stops being a battle and becomes a partner. A silent partner that works for you 24 hours a day, even when you're tired, stressed, or distracted. This is the moment people describe as everything started changing at once. But it didn't change at once. It just looked that way. In reality, this moment is the result of years of small, invisible decisions finally compounding into something you can feel. Once your system starts working for you, the next 10 years don't just build wealth. They build stability. They build identity. They build a version of you that doesn't need motivation anymore, because momentum has taken over. There's a strange moment in every long-term plan that nobody talks about. It's the moment when the future stops feeling like a dream and starts feeling like a destination. Up until this point, most people operate on hope. They hope their savings grow. They hope their income improves. They hope their consistency holds. They hope things will finally get better next year. Hope keeps you moving, but it doesn't keep you steady. But after years of building stability, structure, and alignment, something shifts inside you. Your future stops being a distant idea and becomes something you can actually see. You look at your savings and feel momentum instead of doubt. You check your investments and feel calm instead of fear. You look at your progress and feel clarity instead of confusion. For the first time, the next 10 years don't intimidate you. They inspire you. Because now you understand the most powerful truth about long-term wealth. The future doesn't belong to the smartest people, or the luckiest people, or the people who make perfect moves. It belongs to the people who make aligned moves, people who fix the foundation before chasing growth, people who build systems instead of hoping for miracles, people who let compounding do the heavy lifting, people who stay steady when others get impatient. This is the point where you stop being the person who tries to get ahead and become the person who is moving ahead quietly and consistently. And it's why most people never reach this moment. Their decade gets interrupted by resets. Setbacks break their system. Lifestyle upgrades erase their progress. Impatience pushes them into decisions that cancel out years of effort. But when your system stays intact long enough for the decade to work, everything begins to click. You no longer feel like someone hoping for a better future. You feel like someone creating a better future. And that shift changes the rest of the journey. Because once the future becomes real in your mind, you stop negotiating with your goals and start protecting them. That's the turning point where the next 10 years become the most powerful decade of your life. A 10-year plan isn't about perfection. It's about direction. It's about building a life where your money, your habits, your systems, and your identity move in the same direction long enough for compounding to take over. And when that finally happens, something incredible becomes clear. You realize that the people who end a decade wealthy didn't get lucky. They didn't stumble into the right investment. They didn't find a secret shortcut hidden from everyone else. They simply stayed aligned long enough for the decade to work. They built stability when others ignored it. They created systems when others relied on motivation. They fixed the leaks that kept resetting their journey. They grew income slowly and intentionally. They avoided lifestyle traps that cancel out progress. They stayed consistent in the quiet years when nothing seemed to be happening. And because they did, they reached a moment most people never experience. The moment where money stops feeling like a heavy weight and starts feeling like a silent partner. Your 10-year transformation isn't about becoming someone exceptional. It's about becoming someone consistent, someone patient, someone aligned. Because that version of you can build a future that the rushed, overwhelmed, chaotic version could never reach. The next 10 years will pass anyway. The question is whether they pass by accident or by design. And if this video helped you see that your decade can be built intentionally, steadily, powerfully, then do one thing for me. Like this video and subscribe. It helps this channel reach more people who are quietly trying to rebuild their financial life with clarity instead of chaos. And remember one thing, every small step you take today becomes a massive advantage in 10 years. Start now. Your future self is waiting.